The latest data reveals a shift in hijacking trends, with criminals now engaging in the criminal activity more frequently during the earlier hours of the day. The change raises significant concerns. Well, let's get more insights from crime expert Chad Thomas. Chad, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for speaking to us. What recent trends have you observed in the timing and methods of hijackings in South Africa?
So Tracker's crime index in respect of vehicle crime has just been released, and it ties in very well with the crime stats we've seen coming out from SAPS. There's been a 6.5% overall increase in vehicle-related crime. When we talk about vehicle-related crime, we're talking primarily hijackings and theft of motor vehicles. Hijackings account for about 55% of vehicle crime, and car thefts themselves 45%. But what's very interesting to note in these reports are these different times. We were used to thefts of motor vehicles and most specifically the hijackings of motor vehicles as being something that normally occurs after hours. It seems to be now on the increase, especially in the mornings, which is a great surprise to many crime experts.
So why are you surprised?
Look, hijackings normally took place at night for a number of reasons. There are not a lot of people on the road. People have an escape route that are worked out. They're not going to get caught up in traffic. And also there was the added complication that people were taken with their vehicles late at night so that they could be held against their will, and money could be drawn from their accounts both before midnight and after midnight, because people normally have a daily limit. So we were used to most of these crimes taking place late afternoon, early evening, and progressing through the evenings. We're now seeing that the preferred times are in the mornings. We're seeing an increase in the mornings, and this is a strange occurrence because, of course, there's various factors that one has to take into consideration when it comes to hijackings. And we always thought that hijackers would have a route planned, etc. Now that we're hearing about these incidents taking place more commonly in the early hours of the morning, from 5 a.m. upwards, 8 a.m. upwards, 10 a.m., it means that the criminals have changed their patterns significantly. And this, of course, has an impact on the way in which people respond to crime. People were always warned on the way home to look out for certain things, when driving into their driveway to look out for certain things. They weren't told, when you're leaving for work, start being more conscious of these things. So it's not just hijackings that we're seeing an increase of, but we're also seeing that kidnappings are taking place in the day now, in broad daylight. So crime has always been associated with being a nighttime event because it's easier to escape, it's easier to evade capture. But criminals have adapted.
Are criminals also adapting, Chad, to the absence of police? Is this an indication that, you know what, you do it in the dark of night because you assume there are less eyes, less people to track you down, so that's when you go. But if you're committing a crime at 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock in the morning and you can get away with it, then why not?
Well, that was always the assumption. You do something at night, there's less chance of being caught because there's fewer people out there. We also saw in the past with crime statistics that it would happen during the shift change of police. So they changed the shifts, they staggered the shifts. Security companies are meant to be 24-hour operational. Most of them are. Tracking companies are 24 operational. The police themselves are 24 operational. The problem is, of course, is that we've got this massive problem with contact and violent crime in South Africa, and our police haven't been able to keep up with it. We now know that going into this government of national unity, that one of the prime objectives will be to sort the crime issue out, and we're hoping to see a lot of movement. But SAPS are accepting the role played by the security industry. They're working far closer with the security industry than ever before. But apart from working close with the security industry, we're seeing within their own ranks, there seems to be a change in attitude. The police are listening attentively to crime intelligence reports. We're seeing now with the deployment of more police officers down to KZN, they are taking place they're participating rather in far more disruptive operations, like we've seen with Operation Chanela, which in 1 year netted 600,000 suspects for different crimes. So the police are changing. They've seen that the criminals are adapting. And of course, they were caught on the back foot with the massive increase in violent crime in South Africa, and our statistics show that we have far too few police officers, but the attitude seems to be changing. It's not going to be a short-term solution, which is why we're seeing these increases in crime, especially like the vehicle-related crime that's gone up by 6.5%. But the fact remains is that we are still optimistic that this can be reversed.
Now, you talk about a 6.5% increase in crime stats or in hijackings. What does this translate to in an actual number?
So the figures that have come out from the tracker report is 66 vehicles are involved in vehicle crime on a daily basis. That means either hijacked or that are stolen. We're seeing an increase in certain types of vehicles being targeted. We're seeing a lot of vehicles that are being stolen rather than hijacked because their systems, their security systems are easily compromised by sophisticated syndicates. Whereas in the past, when we saw an increase in the security measures taken by the vehicle manufacturers, it made it far harder for people to just steal cars. We saw an increase in hijackings. Conversely, now we're seeing an increase in car theft because criminals have become very adept at the changes of these that these security systems have. So it's a strange scenario to see that there's a balance now almost between the numbers of hijackings and the numbers of vehicles that are stolen.
So let's talk about what do we look out for as motorists in order to avoid being hijacked, or how do we react when, you know, thieves come their way and they attempt to steal your car?
Yeah, it's a tough one, that, because if somebody wants a vehicle, whether they're going to steal it or whether they're going to hijack it, they're going to get it. It's all about what we call target hardening. A lot of the viewers will remember the days of gear locks. They'll remember the days of steering wheel locks. They'll remember the days of anti-hijacking devices that came out. And it became a lot harder for people to steal cars, which is why we then saw an increase in hijackings. There's so many different security systems out there. The most important thing, of course, is the safety of the individual. So people need to be cognizant of their surroundings. They need to keep to a routine. They need to let their loved ones, their families, their colleagues know where they're going to be in case they become victims of crime. Obviously, we always say don't travel into dangerous areas, don't travel at night. But with the statistics saying that there's a lot of car thefts and hijackings taking place in the morning, that kind of advice about not driving around at night doesn't really ring as true as it did a few years ago. So again, you have to be cognizant of your surroundings. If you're taking your vehicle and you're going out on business, you're parking it, but you make sure you park in a secure environment. You have to be aware of your surroundings. But if somebody's targeting your particular make of vehicle, if they're targeting you yourself, you have to make sure that you're cognizant of these threats. People are even looking at what type of cars they're purchasing these days, because there's certain vehicles that are high up on the list of those that are ordered by criminal syndicates and are then taken across the border. So people are even becoming aware of what vehicles they drive and what vehicles they buy their children to drive, to put them at less risk of being hijacked or having their vehicle stolen.
Chad, do we have a stat on the number of failed hijackings? The number of attempts where individuals try to hijack and come out second, I suppose?
It would be very difficult, because a lot of times somebody may try hijack a person doesn't realize that perhaps they were almost the victim of a hijacking, so there would be nothing to report. And most of the time people only report a crime so they can get a reference number to give their insurers. And people are reluctant to report an attempted crime because they believe it's not going to go anywhere. Why would somebody investigate something that might have happened? Of course, if a shot is discharged, if somebody's injured during the attempt, then charges will be opened of the attempt that occurred, and perhaps a charge of attempted murder or assault or something will be associated with that particular attempt at the theft or the attempt at the hijacking. But it's highly unlikely that you'd be able to accurately have any statistics in respect of attempted thefts or attempted hijackings.
I suppose the reason I ask, Chad, is because these hijackers are professionals, and they're really good at what they do. Now, you as a crime expert are, again, an expert. I'm a novice in the way of fending off hijackers, as are many other people that are potentially watching this show. So it's almost very difficult, or next to impossible, to be on the lookout. What do I do? What do I not do? Because they always seem to be 2 or 3 steps ahead of the average person.
Yeah, look, we're living in an environment that is very conducive towards criminality. we've got a country where heinous crimes go largely unpunished. You've got a very low conviction rate for rapists, a very low conviction rate for murderers. This emboldens criminals. If they can see that the most heinous crimes, people can get away with those crimes, and there's little to no accountability or consequence for those actions, people that are opportunistic criminals very quickly start climbing the rungs of the ladder and committing other crimes and becoming career criminals. And South Africa, because of various factors, whether we bring in the unemployment, the socioeconomic factors, the disparity between the haves and the have-nots, we have got a massive crime problem in South Africa. In fact, as an emerging economy, it's frightening just how bad crime is in South Africa. And it's become a profession. You see that syndicates are being used for an array of crimes, whether it's the hijacking of vehicles, whether it's CRT robberies, whether it's ATM bombings, whether it's murder for hire or kidnappings. There's a symbiotic link between all these organized crime syndicates. One must remember, a car doesn't just get stolen or hijacked from an opportunistic perspective. It gets stolen or hijacked because it's been ordered. That vehicle is either going to be taken across the border unlawfully, or it's going to cross the border with fabricated papers, or it's going to be used in the commission of another crime. It may be used in a murder for hire. It may be used in a kidnapping. It may be used as a ramming vehicle in a CRT heist or a getaway vehicle in a CRT heist. So criminals are very adept at change, and they are very organized. And that's the reason we call them organized crime syndicates. Just like we prepare for our day, our meetings, the work that we do. Criminals prepare in advance for what they're going to do. They've got soldiers for hire, they've got actionable intelligence, and they are executing their crimes these days with precision.
So finally, let's talk about what the police are doing or aren't doing in order to deal with the levels of crime that we are witnessing.
Well, look, the police are making a dent in organized crime syndicates now that crime intelligence seems to be becoming more capacitated and have more resources at their disposal. They're also working with organizations like Business Against Crime South Africa, the Security E2 project. There's organizations like SITASA that are assisting the police with intelligence, which is actionable. And SITASA is actually the CRT Association of South Africa. So there's a lot of collaboration that's occurring within the police. And we're seeing in provinces like KZN, we're seeing that the police are taking the fight to the criminals. There's been a lot of disruptive projects that have taken place, and they've been targeting specifically organized crime syndicates. And surprisingly, when one looks at those crime statistics that came out in respect of vehicle crime, one of the provinces that had a decrease in hijackings and car theft was, in fact, KZN. The three provinces that had an increase were Gauteng, the Western Cape, and Northwest. So KZN seems to be doing something right. A lot of people will say yes, because they're shooting. Well, it's not just that. They're not just shooting willy-nilly at anybody out there. They are confronting armed criminals who aren't hesitating to shoot at police officers. So General Konazi is doing something right in KZN. We can take a leaf out of his book.
I suggest we do that. Chad Thomas, crime expert, appreciate your time enlightening us on the rather high statistics around vehicle hijacking.